You volunteered your weekends at your masjid to teach at their weekend school. Brimming with excitement, you imagine the ways you will positively impact the lives of your weekend students. By the end of the first day, however, that initial excitement turns to dread. You feel like you are way over your head, with children running around and not listening to anything you say. You struggle to gain control of the class. You feel more like a babysitter than an Islamic weekend teacher. So, how can you make your Islamic weekend class more effective? With a lesson plan, you can gain control of your class, ensuring that your students come away with new knowledge, which in turn will positively impact the children, Insha'Allah. This 3-part video will give you a basic overview of what a lesson plan is and how to organize one. In this first video, we will define what a lesson plan is, offer a brief overview of the different components of a lesson plan, and then delve into the first 2 components of a lesson plan, lesson objectives and lesson materials. So, first off, what's a lesson plan? A lesson plan is a teacher's plan of action for a particular day's lesson. The structure and organization of the lesson plan better guarantees that students retain what they have learned. Lesson plans especially come in handy when it comes to time management. What needs to be kept in mind while developing a lesson plan is that children undergo rapid developments both physically and mentally. Therefore, their attention spans can easily dissipate. A few minutes of idle time during your class can disrupt your child's concentration. You want to make sure your students stay engaged by you, the teacher, being able to account for every moment of class time. Simply put, the more organized your lesson is, the more attentive your students will potentially be, Insha'Allah. So, what is the structure of a lesson plan? How do you organize one? There are many ways of putting together a lesson plan, all of which stem from the fact that there are various educational philosophies. However, almost all lesson plans have certain components in common. The first component of lesson plans is the lesson objectives. These are the goals that identify not only what students will learn, but what they will be able to do. That's a very important distinction, and we will get to that in a minute. The next component are lesson methods and procedures, which is how you will teach the lesson. These can be many things, from activities like games or group readings from a text to group discussions. All these and more make up a part of lesson methods and procedures. Another component of lesson plans is the assessment, most often coming in the form of graded homework, tests, and final essays. The purpose of assessments is not only to measure how well your students are learning, but how well you are teaching it. Another important component of lesson plans are lesson reflections. You always want to sum up the lesson to drive home all the important points covered in the lesson. The final component of lesson plans are the lesson materials, which is a list of physical things you will use in class like handouts, textbooks, and workbooks. The lesson materials used depend upon your lesson methods and procedures. Now, to give you better insight into lesson plans, we will be using concrete examples from one of IQRA's teacher's manuals, specifically looking at the first lesson from grade level 4 of the We Are Muslim series, which deals with the concept of taqwa. The lesson is called Becoming a Muttaqi. IQRA's We Are Muslim series is part of our program of Aqidah, Fiqh, and Akhlaq curriculum. This and other IQRA titles that we reference can be found in the description box below with their appropriate links. Now, let's get into the first component of lesson plans. As we mentioned, lesson plans begin with a goal, or as they are known in the education field, lesson objectives. Often, lesson plans will have several lesson objectives. Why? Because you don't want to have students simply parrot Islamic concepts. You want them to understand and implement. For example, in IQRA's lesson on taqwa called Becoming a Muttaqi, not only do we state that students will be able to define the meaning of taqwa, but they will be able to describe the qualities of a muttaqi from the ayah of the Quran, discuss ways to achieve those qualities, be able to observe the Muslims around them, and detect the qualities of a muttaqi in some of them. And finally, comprehend faith in Allah, love for Allah, and awe of Allah as the 3 important elements of taqwa. Notice that certain words guide the lesson objectives: define, describe, discuss, comprehend. Lessons that teach a concept will use these kinds of words to direct a teacher's lesson objectives. Now, let's suppose you are teaching an action-oriented lesson, like performing salah or wudu. In that case, your lesson objectives may use words like perform or use. Whatever your lesson is, you want to make sure your lesson objectives use such words that encapsulate not only what the lesson is, but also what your students will be able to understand and do when the class is over. Another important lesson plan component is the physical things you will use in your lesson. These are called lesson materials. The most common materials listed in lesson plans are things such as textbooks, workbooks, and handouts. In IQRA's Becoming a Muttaqi lesson plan, a few of the materials listed are the We Are Muslims Grade 4 textbook, the Grade 4 workbook, and handouts that can be found in the teacher's manual. It's good practice to list what material things you need to deliver the lesson plan effectively. It's also important to remember that children are not adults. Perhaps you, the teacher, can sit through an Islamic lecture and the only materials you need are a pen and notepad to take notes. Most children, however, are tactile learners, and they learn best by using tools, playing games, coloring, or writing out answers to questions. While there may not be much of a cognitive difference between a 30-year-old and a 35-year-old, the cognitive gap between a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old is immense. So, materials and lesson plans in general should reflect the age and corresponding capabilities of the student. Again, while it may seem tedious, listing the lesson materials helps you to stay organized. Alhamdulillah, that is a brief overview of what a lesson plan is and a little about the first 2 components to lesson plans. Now, we have added organized notes to everything we covered so far, which can be found in the description box located below the video. Hit the notification button to be alerted about our next video, which will introduce the next component of lesson plans called lesson methods and procedures. If you have any questions, please do ask them in the comments section. And if you are a teacher and have anything to add, please feel free to do so in the comments section as well. IQRA also offers training sessions for Islamic teachers. That information can be found in the description box as well. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.
Contact us to place an order or for details on additional IQRA services and school discounts.